that's perfect timing with my cell phone, huh? I forgot to turn it off. Sorry about that, guys. But got a good one coming at you tonight. If you want to know how to communicate when everything's gone bad, we're going to tell you how to do it. And I got the man that's going to show you the equipment you need, Dr. Craig McAllister. The man is a communications genius. So he's going to share some of that genius with you here in just a few minutes. Oh, let's see who we got in the house here. We got Pauline. All right, Pauline was first in with us. Appreciate that. We got Tammy Joe. All right. Good to see you, Tammy. Lynn Stalker's with us. All right. We got our Iowa contingency here. Appreciate you joining me, Iowa. I truly do. Hope your weather's doing good up there. Debbie Jones and her husband Rob. I think it's the first time they've talked to us, but they've been here with us before. So it's good to see them back. Michael O'Brien. All right. My man right there. Yes, sir. Biggs. Cynthia's with us. Hope you guys caught her premiere earlier. It's a good video. If you hadn't, you need to go back and check it out because it's really a good one. Who else? Kayla's with us tonight. She wants to say hello to everybody. Greg Harmon. There you go. All right. We got us a good crowd in here tonight.
Elizabeth White.
I'm sorry.
Elizabeth White.
Elizabeth White. Yep. Hey, what are you doing? You folks don't know her, but she's a writer. If I'd known she was going to be here, I'd have plugged her book for her, but she can plug it right down here, put it in the comments, put a link to your book. Please feel free to do that. Lori's with us again tonight. All right. Fourth and goal. Fourth and goal's with us. Man, we got a good crowd tonight. That's great. That's great.
Brother Phil.
Brother Phil in here somewhere. Yeah, there he is right there. Yeah. Hope you got through the storms okay. I'm going to make some comments on the storms here in just a few minutes. Blessed Mama's with us.
She's new.
All right. Thank you for joining. I do appreciate you joining. I hope I got something here that'll entertain you and educate you. That's what we're here for. And son, EP87. All right. Good bunch tonight. Good bunch. So let's go and get into it. First thing I got to do is make a correction. When I did the thing about the solar power and the EMP and all that stuff, I said that your batteries and your panels wouldn't short out. I wasn't 100% correct on that because lithium ion batteries have a chip in them, this chip right here, that balances the charge on your batteries. But an EMP will take those lithium ion batteries out. And the really serious problem I see with that is you can't have your batteries hooked up and charging. You can't have your batteries, even on a trickle charge on a solar or anywhere for that matter. They would have to be in a Faraday cage to be protected, I should say. You know, they're not like regular glass mat batteries or just regular lead batteries. They do have that chip in them, and it will zap them out. If we get an EMP or a CME, those $500 batteries you bought will be a good paperweight after that. So you might want to remember that if you're, buying those batteries for your solar power system. But on Friday we had, I didn't say we had, they had a terrible storm front go through Tennessee, Kentucky, up in that area. And lots of my friends on social media were complaining about their lights were out. They were in the dark. So, me being one of the greatest guys in the world, I posted this on Facebook and I offered to help them out. Just shoot me a message. And, if you want to make sure this don't happen in the future, shoot me a private message. I'll help you out, tell you what you need to do. And the response was unbelievable. The response was zero. Not one person took me up on that offer. I made it clear that I wasn't selling anything. I just wanted to help them because they're my friends. And here's some of the posts I saw. Lights were out for 36 hours. Lights were out for 50 hours. Somebody joking about wondering if, the local council members had power. Another one there, he said his power finally came back on Sunday morning about 11 o'clock. Well, the storm hit on Friday. during the day. So they were out all that time, and not one of them, not a single one of them, contacted me wanting me to help them out. This leads me to believe one thing. If the shit really does hit the fan, the majority of our population is just complacently going to die. They don't seem to care. When somebody offers to help them, they don't care. Okay, that's cool. If that's the way you want to live, then you live that way. I ain't going to do it. And my offer still stands, but you need to hit me up quick because, if you wait too long, you wait for it to happen again, and then you come and say, well, I wish I'd have talked to you. I'm going to say, yeah, wish you did too. So, we'll see what happens with that. I couldn't believe nobody responded. Are you comfortable now, Tucker? Lay down. You're sitting there looking at me like I owe him money. What we got right here? I was told a guy who built a Faraday cage for MRI rooms that it actually depends on the frequency that's used. Galvanized trash can. Yeah, you can use a galvanized trash can, but you have to make sure you use some kind of like that aluminum duct tape to seal around the lid where the lid goes down on the trash can. You got to make sure you seal that up. If you don't, then you're wasting your time. But what else I got here? Oh yeah, the CIA. They're actually going to do they actually did their job here. They got intelligence that says China will invade Taiwan before 2027. A CIA director said that. William Burns. That's not that far away, guys. And if that happens, it's going to be all hell's going to break loose, and you're going to wish you had that Faraday cage. But hopefully that intelligence is a little more reliable than what they had on Trump being a Russian spy and all the intelligence they had on that. So, yeah, it's coming. We know it's coming. It's coming within 2 or 3 years here. CIA is saying so. So you need to make take appropriate actions to make sure you're ready. That's what this program's about tonight. When we get Dr. Craig in here, he's going to tell you what you need to make sure you can communicate. Because right off the bat, if it was me, if I was an opposing force to the United States and I had the ability to pop off an EMP, you'd be sitting in the dark. It's that simple. But what else we got here before we get into Dr. Craig? Oh, civil defense. I'm sure a lot of you out there is my age. You remember the old Civil Defense Department and how they had bunkers everywhere, pretty much, under large buildings full of supplies for people to go to. They would send you a civil defense manual. They actually had civil defense personnel that would come around back in my day and talk to us at the schools, tell us what to do, And of course, we did the old flip your desk and duck and cover. Like that's gonna save you from an atomic bomb. That desk is gonna save your life. But I mean, that's how in depth it used to be. But today, nope. Civil Defense Department supposedly was taken over by Department of Homeland Security. I went online today and I looked several places trying to find a manual like they used to give people for free. Federal government don't do that anymore. If they do, let me know. I couldn't find it. So shoot me an email if you find where you can get that. I'd really like to get a copy of that. There are copies out there that you can buy off Amazon for $20 a piece, but federal government don't do that anymore. They pretty much, they'll send you a notice on your phone or through your TV or whatever. And you're on your own. Maybe they'll open some schools to put you in, something like that. After the fact, if you survived, you can go to those schools, if it's like a nuclear threat and they drop a bomb in your town, you can go to that school and sit there and hope you don't die from radiation poisoning since everything's above ground. But that's pretty much all it is nowadays. It's really, really just, it's a joke. Civil defense is nothing like what it used to be. And right now, I think we're pretty close to really popping off some serious warfare between the United States and somewhere. I mean, it ain't no big secret. We're fighting with Russia through Ukraine. Big guy's getting his 10%. I don't know how much their president's getting or Nancy Pelosi, but I'm sure they're getting their cut. But, it's getting nasty over there. And if China does go into Taiwan, it ain't going to be like messing around with Russia. It will have an immediate effect here in the United States. And it could get really nasty really quick. So make sure you're ready. One part of that's that communications. Let me bring my guest in here, Dr. Craig McAllister. There he is right there, folks. He's going to take you through a little presentation here to show you what you need to make sure you're ready to go when the shit does hit the fan. You ready to take it, boss?
I got it. Ready to go.
I'm going to bring this up for you here. Go ahead. Go ahead and click on that on your end, see if it comes up.
All right. I think you got to do it on your end, Kate.
All right, there we go.
There we are. Yay. Okay. Right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Craig, and I am a amateur radio operator. You can see my call sign there. And
amateur.
Amateur radio or ham radio, whatever you want to call it. And then I'm also, you see the license KC4 CMM, and then I'm also have a GRMS license. And so I take this seriously. I was part of civil defense back in the 60s, and it's always kind of stayed. But emergency comm is critical because the first thing to go on in many emergencies is going to be communications. And one of the most important things in an emergency is communication. So put those two together and realize if there's an EMP, CME, or even most cell towers only carry about 72 hours worth of diesel fuel in them. So if a disaster goes more than 72 hours, those towers will go out regardless of the cause. And then the longer an event occurs, the more likely you'll have more and more communication failures. So what I'm going to talk about at 40,000 feet is how you know what's going on. What happened? What is the government saying, or the local officials? By the way, where's my family? And how are we going to survive this? So we're going to start out by talking about your MCOM plan. Every disaster scenario requires planning, whether it's all the different preps you've got. But for an MCOM plan, you need to know how to reach out to your family members. And realizing that initially, when the cell towers start to get overloaded or start going down, the only phone that's probably going to work is text messaging. And that may still go through, but everything else will probably go. So then you say, what equipment do I need? How diverse, how spread out are the people I want to stay in touch with? And how do you prepare and practice? Because comms are more difficult. The better the comms, the more difficult they are and the more practice it takes. So plan now to give you a chance at survival. And remember, 1 is none and 2 is 1. If you've got 1 radio, basically you've got none. If you got 2, you might have 1 if they're protected from water or whatever happens. So what I want to talk about is the basics of communications. You hear a lot of different things about different types of communication out there. And this chart goes from the most basic to the most advanced. Basic on the left. Everything on the left is non-licensed. You can start this tomorrow. And it starts with your little wind-up AM, FM weather band radio. Next to it is a Kato, about an $80 radio, which has ham band and a few radio. The thing about antennas on radios is critical. No matter what radio you get, if you don't have a great antenna, it's not going to work well. And a lot of people will buy a radio and it says it's ham ready, radio ready, but it's not without a better antenna, and realize you need an expensive receiver, probably $100 or more, to get one that'll cover upper sideband and lower sideband, which is what ham radio operators use. But minimum AM FM radio, got to have it. The next easiest thing to get is a CB radio. You can buy these in Amazon. You can buy the walkie-talkies for $50 up, to $100. You can buy the mobile radios, which can go in your car. You can use them as a base station. Those are going to start, anywhere from literally $40. up to several $100. The handheld is 5 watts. The base station is usually 5 watts. Sometimes it can be a little bit more, but CB radio is limited by their power. It is also limited by distance. You'll hear people say, well, CB radio, you get 10, 15 miles. Never. You only can count on CB radio for about a mile if it's a handheld, if you're lucky. And if you have a base station or mobile station, maybe 5 miles. But after that, you're kind of lost. The next best thing and the next level up is your FRS, which stands for Family Radio System. This takes you into FM. And this is better than CB, which is AM. Better signal, and but limited power. You're only allowed to have half a watt in the FRS bands, and you'll see them in the stores, and they'll say range 35 miles. Truth here, you'll be lucky to get a mile on them, maybe a mile and a half. The only time you get 35 miles on one of these suckers is if you're on a peak on a mountain, and the person you talk to is 20 miles away on a peak in another mountain, and the only thing between you is air. As soon as you add anything, trees, buildings, the range goes down. But FRS is good for around the home, around the ranch, maybe a couple blocks away, but that's about it. So these are your basics. No license. Start collecting tomorrow. If you're going to get them, remember 2. And put 1 in a Faraday cage or wrap it up in aluminum foil. So if there is an EMP, at least you've got some communications left. And then with your family plan, make sure you know which frequencies you're going to use. They have about 25 different frequencies on them. Now, go to the right-hand column. These all require some type of license. The easiest license requirement is the GMRS, General Radio Management System, or General Mobile Radio System, I'm sorry. These require a kind of a family license. I think it's $70 or $80, and everyone in your family can use the same call sign. And now instead of having 1 watt or 5 watts, these are also FM. The handhelds can have 5 watts. The mobiles can have up to 50 watts. And the other benefit of the GMRS is these are the first radios you can use that have the potential to have built-in repeaters. Now, to answer your question, what's a repeater? A repeater is a device, and KT did a build on one that basically takes your signal and repeats it at a higher elevation and with more power, which allows your radios to reach out much farther. Because GMRS, FRS, CB, all line of sight. They basically shoot straight, and anything in between you is a problem. But you find a lot of Jeepers and off-road people are now going to GMRS. They used to use CB, but it wasn't reliable enough. And they'll put these 25 or 50 watt mobile units in, and they can really do a good job communicating. So simple license, easy to get. Amazon's got some really good price on some of those units. That's a good place to start, but you need a license. Next is your ham, VHF, and HF. These require an individual license. It requires a technical license by the FCC. It's a very easy exam. You spend a couple days prepping for it, and you can take that exam. And ham radios basically go.
Hang on, Craig. We lost our signal there for a minute.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. I think it's my internet. That's going to be corrected tomorrow. I am getting a new internet provider.
Just back up.
Okay.
But go ahead with your ham radio.
Ham, VHF, HF, UHF. These are your entry-level ham radio radios. The handhelds go, basically, they're called HTs now, handy talkies. Usually they go anywhere from 1 watt to 10 watts. But they're still line of sight. But what you find with ham radio, especially VHF and UHF, there is a defined repeater system. And so I can take my HT out my front yard, get on a local repeater, and I've talked to people in Korea, I've talked to people in the UK, all around the country, all the way to Australia. Every week I was talking to a guy from Australia through a repeater system. It takes a while to understand ham radio, and that's why it's really important if you plan to use this that you go ahead and get a license and start practicing, because they're a little bit more difficult. The mobile stations, 50 watts. Oh, that's unbelievable. My son-in-law lives 12 miles from me, and we can go from my mobile radio, 25 watts, to his house without a repeater. And so we can maintain communication that way. But this is where you come in initially. When you get a ham license, you start at the VHF, UHF level. And then the last one, which is the best, both GMRS and ham, VHF, UHF are line of sight. Ham basically reflects off the atmosphere. And so when you start using these ham radios, and I have the one that you see there on the left, that's my base unit. That unit is 100 watts, and I can talk around the world on that. And you bounce off the atmosphere. Ham radios, all about antennas. All about antennas. The radio is important, but if you don't have a good antenna, you basically have an anchor. And so what you find here is on the left is called a Yaesu FT991, cost about $1,300.
Oh shit!
Good antenna system for that's going to cost you. You can start at. I have a simple one because I live in an HOA. I have a simple one. It's 100 feet of wire that I throw up and put over the tree, and it works great. But I have to take it down when I'm not using it so I don't get fined.
Let me interrupt you here for a minute.
Sure.
All right, let's say you're a new prepper and you want to make sure you get information and you want to speak with, say you got you're the checkpoint everybody comes to, and you want to make sure you're able to communicate with people in about a 3-mile radius. So what do I need to get the information I would need, and what do I need to talk to those people if they're out scouting around for water or food or whatever?
If it's a 3-mile radius, and the easiest one is the GMRS mobile unit. You mount it in your house like you've got your mobile mounted with a power supply, put an antenna up on the roof, and you'll be able to have probably a 3 to 5 mile radius, unless you're downtown with a lot of buildings.
Right.
That would allow you to really communicate there. The ham radios, the VHF, UHF radios, the handy talkies, and the mobile unit, those are the easiest, but the problem is in a grid down situation, if an EMP comes, many of the repeaters are going to go out.
Right.
So what a lot of people, myself included, I have emergency repeaters. You can't just put a repeater up. It's against the law because the repeater channels are regulated. But in an emergency, I have 2 different repeaters, and I know exactly where they will go. They are little radios in like KT did, and they've got a little solar panel attached to them, and they will operate indefinitely and increases my range out to probably 10 to 15 miles.
All right. What about for receiving any information? What
receiving information is if you have the right radios, a good AM FM radio, but a Voyager or the one like you've got, as long as they can get some of these frequencies, you're going to hear what's out there.
Yeah. All right. I got a Texan 660.
Yeah, that's a good radio.
All the bands, it'll cover everything. It
will
cover everything.
Down in the ham HF, you've got on the right, that's a small, low power, and I actually have that in a protected EMP bag. And I can take that out to a picnic ground, which I did once, for KT. Yeah, I can set it up. It's battery operated, and I can be on air in 5 minutes. And you can talk. We talked to Germany from the Baldwin Park, thing. So very, very useful and good to go. Now, we're going to do questions at the end, but here's some thoughts. You got to know the limitations of your selection, range and sophistication. CB, 1 to 3 miles, maybe. Walkie-talkie to walkie-talkie, basically a mile at the most. FRS, probably a mile. I can usually get a mile walkie-talkie to walkie-talkie. But then when you get up to GMRS, much better. The better equipment, the most reliable, my 100-watt radio that I can talk around the world without repeaters is really not that difficult, but you've got to practice with it. because there are a lot of bells, a lot of buttons, a lot of things. And if you practice, you'll get really good at it. And then you can talk to your relatives in Colorado, and you can talk to your relatives in New York or Michigan or Mexico or wherever. But you'll have to know which bands to use and what time of the day, because in HF, depending on the weather or the time of the day, certain bands, like 20 meters, 40 meters, I know you guys don't know what that means, are up, and sometimes they're not. You've got to protect your equipment from damage. And in Florida with hurricanes, you got to put your radios in an ammunition box, a 50 caliber ammo box or something, protect it from water. For EMP, put it in the same box, but wrap it up in aluminum foil and protect it so that if there's an EMP, that equipment will work. Because if an EMP comes, there are going to be a lot of people with walkie-talkies and radios, not going to work. Half of my radios are up and running, and I expect to lose them. And every radio that I lose, I have 2 backups for it that are protected from both weather and EMP.
Yeah.
Ham radios are the best, but they require a license, and they're not ready out of the box. You can take a CB out, use it in 10 minutes. FRS, same thing. GMRS, you got to get a license, but it's not a big deal. And the key here, and this is something I hear a lot that really bothers me on prepper channels, is all radios can be used in an emergency. You don't need any license in an emergency, but you got to know how the FCC defines an emergency. If the governor declares a state of emergency in Florida for a hurricane, that doesn't allow you to use ham radios, because I'm a member of the Orange County Amateur Radio Emergency System. And when there's a hurricane coming, we go online 24/7 and we need the frequencies. And so I've heard people say, well, as soon as the governor declares it, you can use ham radios. No, not true. You can use a ham radio or any radio in emergency if your life's on the line. You see a disaster, something's on fire, someone's injured, and if they don't get help immediately, that's an emergency. But it's really important to know the definition of emergency, because otherwise you can find yourself in trouble. So on the left, the bottom here on this slide, this is what my base unit looks like. And down in the bottom there is the white light is my HF. Then over here on the left side, the greenish screen is my UHF VHF base station, 50 watts. And then middle of the box is my 220. And then on the left above the yellow is the CB radio. I monitor everything on my portable thing. And this thing is a go box. This is built in a Gator box. I put a front and back on it, and it can go with me if I have to. And it's also battery backup. If the power goes off, it's now on a lithium battery, and it's, by the way, covered in aluminum. So for safety reasons. And then up here, a lot of different walkie-talkies starting on the left, with the FRS, CB type of things, all the way over to a VHF radio. And so I put some definitions here, but this is just a bunch of stuff for you to read. So I think what we ought to do now, KT, is open it up for questions or anything from the group.
All right. My girl Fluffy's got a question for you. If your child lives 30 miles away with significant hills between, what would you recommend?
If it's 30 miles away with a hill, I would recommend either a GRMS mobile, probably 25 or 50 watts, with a repeater capability. And then if you could put a repeater on the hill in between you, it'd be like you're right next door to each other. And like I said, most people, myself, all of my repeaters are simple. And they're in a waterproof box. I can take it up to a hill, put it next to a tree, tie it in a tree, and it'll stay there and repeat. And I can get 30 miles both ways. Right. Ham radio the same way.
Right. The video I did with the repeater I made with the 2 radios.
Right.
Now this radio, like the one I have right here, it's a little small one. It's only good actually for about 2 miles, maybe 2.5 miles. But once you put that repeater in between, my logic with that was, okay, like I said in the video, put a rope on it, raise it up in the trees over the buildings, and you double that range. So,
Yep.
Well, it works that way with pretty much any other radio.
Yeah, the GMRSs have built-in repeaters in them, but you're going to have to locate something in. Usually, the best thing to do is put a repeater between you and the people you want to talk to at a high point.
Right.
Now, I have two different types of repeaters. The simplest one I have is called a simplex, and that's basically one radio. And what it does is you talk into it, and then when you're done talking, it repeats what you say, so the person on the other side can hear it.
Right.
Very simple, very easy. So I hope that answers your question.
You made the point that if a state declares an emergency, that don't mean that you can talk on a ham radio.
Right.
Or
correct.
a GMRS radio.
Yep.
It has to be a federal emergency.
Well, it has to be shit hits the fan.
Right.
Or something like that. But if it's a flooding emergency or fire emergencies or stuff like that, it's still not authorizing you to work a ham radio or a GMRS without a license.
Right. You got to remember that's a federal license.
Yes.
So it has to be a federal emergency.
Yep.
And I mean, things really have to be bad. But the most important thing to do, seriously, is get you a good shortwave radio that picks up upper and lower bands on the side of these frequencies, the upper frequency and the lower frequency. And it covers several bands like the 10 meter, 20 meter, 30 meter. Like I said, I have a Texan 660. I should have broke it out for this broadcast, didn't think about it, but it'll get anything you want, pretty much any channel in the air, it'll pick it up. And that's how you get information.
Right. And the other thing to realize on those radios that KT's talking about, his is a very good one, so it gets upper and lower sideband. Some of the less expensive radios say they cover the ham bands, but what ham radios do to extend the range is they split the band. They have upper band and lower band. And what happens is if you don't get a good radio, you're not going to get USB, so you're not going to hear a lot of traffic.
That's right. That's right. And the most important thing in an emergency is gathering information.
Right.
Yep. So you got to know what's going on around you. And like I have set up with my family, we all have radios. I have a couple of frequencies programmed in them. One's a repeater frequency, one's not. That way, if that repeater's down, we can try to connect on the simplex channel.
All right.
So that's something else you folks really need to consider.
But for that woman that had the 30 miles of the mountain in between, probably the best thing would be the general mobile radio system with a couple 25 or 50 watt base stations and with a repeater in between. That'd be the best way to do it, because that way her license could cover her relatives.
Right. Can you see the question here?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. The only way you're going to really honestly talk to them in a true emergency, and that when I say a true emergency, that's where the power goes out and the repeaters go out, is with an HF radio.
All right.
If the VHF and UHF repeaters stay up, you can do that. I mean, I can get on my handheld right now, and there's something called the East Coast reflector, and I can get on that. And if I set up a check-in time with family in upstate New York, say that every Thursday at 8:00 at night, let's call and check in, that repeater will connect us. It's like we're right next door to each other, and it uses a ham radio repeater system.
Yeah. And we got to throw a little humor in here. Nothing wrong with that. Things go really bad. That's right. Break out that can.
That's a long string. I'd probably,
Gotta get some monofilament,
Yeah, well, but then someone's going to wrap string around it and they'll intercept your messages.
Yeah, that's probably true. Damn government would be out there cutting your cable, cutting your string or something like that. But even these little Baofeng, let me grab mine. These little Baofeng UV5Rs here in Florida, you need to check and see if you have a state system, a state emergency system for ham radios like we have here in Florida. This little ham radio, I can talk all over the state of Florida with it. So I know Craig's got one. Looks like he's digging for it. But, I can talk from Key West to Tallahassee or, Jacksonville to Miami with just these little handheld radios, this little 5-watt radio. So check with your state. See if your state has a system like that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
several of them do. And when the
But-
hurricanes roll through here, I mean, that radio's popping and I'm gathering information. And, and I know if I have an emergency, I can just, jump in there and say, I'm at this location. I have a life threatening emergency. Can you please send help? Because it happens all the time. I hear it all the time.
Yeah. And the thing about these radios, they look pretty simple, but if you don't know how to program them, they're useless. And if the grid goes down and you haven't practiced with them and they've been in your, Faraday box and you bring them out and say, okay, now you'll never program it. It's, even using the internet, it's difficult in a computer.
Yeah.
But these are really handy. This one is about $100 because it's a Yaesu. But I've got a ton of UV5s. I've given them to my daughters and their families so that we have a designated communication repeater. And if the repeater goes out, then, they got to hoof it to our place.
Yep. That's what I did. I mean, they're not that expensive. They're, once you learn to program that first channel, you can get online and get all those frequencies you need, and they all program in the same way. They're just a different number. That's all. So once you learn that first one, it's easy. But does anybody have any more questions for Dr. C there? Come on, bring them to me. If not, I'm gonna let him go to bed because why not go to bed? I know he got some grape juice over there. I got apple juice over here. But if you got any questions, what about state to state? Can it be tracked when using them? When using a ham radio?
Yep. OPSEC, operational security, is critical because some of these radios are very easy to track. In fact, ham radio clubs have tournaments where they try and track where someone is. And it's
looks like we lost
kind of like and then everyone tries to find them. So the thing is, it is against the law to use scrambled signals on ham radio.
Right.
And on GMRS, you can set privacy codes, and that's okay. But you can't do that on a ham radio. Now, if the shit hits the fan, then, and all the rules are gone, you can scramble this radio in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And the only people that be able to hear it, but it's illegal to do it unless,
But you can also come up with your own code, which has been done in the past, I know. So
yeah,
you come up with your own codes to operate by. It's really not that hard to get away, but they can find you if they want to get out and track you down.
Oh, they'll find you. And what happens is if you buy one of these and say, I'm just going to go on and make up some numbers and practice with it. Most of the hams I know that are really good hams, the QSR, and they will actually go online and pull up the call sign you just used, and if it doesn't match, they'll report you.
Yeah, but honestly, nobody's ever been arrested for using a ham radio without a license. You get a nasty letter from the government if they find out where you live. They don't even fine you. But I'm a ham head too. I got my ham radio. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you become a nuisance, they will track you down.
Right.
And,
right. They might knock on your door and say, "Hey, you're being an asshole. Stop being an asshole."
Oh, if they come to your door, they're going to want more than that.
I don't know. We're talking the federal government here. I guess that depends on your race and nationality. So.
Oh.
All right, we're going to let you get out of here. We appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I talked fast, and JT's going to put the slides up. And as he said, you can always try and reach me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions in depth. It's hard in a short presentation to get into the trees on these things.
So, all right. Thanks,
all right.
Greg.
Thanks,
see ya.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
All right. I hope you guys got something out of that. He's been humble. He really is. That guy can do magic with those radios. I mean, I took a couple of these to him, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Said, program these for me. He put 150 channels in them in like a minute and a half. That guy is a wizard when it comes to these radios, guys. Get that good radio that you can receive with, and something that you can transmit with within a decent parameter of your bug out location or wherever your mag is stationed. And if you have any questions, you know how to hit me up, theorlandoprepper@gmail.com. But I think I've taken enough of your time. I appreciate you folks being here with us. Hope you enjoyed Dr. C being with us. I'm going to try to line up some more guests, and hopefully we can all learn something from them. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to say stay strong, stay patriotic, pray for the United States of America. The Orlando Prepper is out.